Action figure reboots. Sponsored by Pearson Art.
Hello, and welcome back. Today we're looking at a Kenner Obi Wan Kenobi, released in 1978, and part of the original lineup that was released that year. You know, it's funny, when this movie was first released in 1977, Alec Guinness, along with Peter Cushing, were two of the biggest stars in the film. It's kind of crazy to think about that today because everybody else that was in it is so famous. At the time, I didn't know who he was, but this movie made me a lifelong fan of Sir Alec Guinness. He had a long and prolific career, both here and abroad. Star Wars was just a small part of it, but it had the most impact. I've seen most, if not all, of his films. But if you want to see a good one, do yourself a favor and check out The Bridge on the River Kwai. It's really a great movie, and for what it's worth, I highly recommend it. Because I'm such a fan, I was excited to put this figure together. So, with that being said, let's begin. These figures weren't available for the Christmas season in 1977. So, what retailers did was they sold packaging with coupons that were redeemable the following February. But they also used to have this display case, this one in particular, so you could see which figures were coming. And I noticed something strange about the Obi one. For some reason, whoever put this picture together gave him his robe but didn't give him sleeves. I thought that looked kind of odd because clearly, in the movie, he has a robe with sleeves. And then the figure came out, and I was even more baffled because his whole body was one color. I'm not mentioning the vinyl vest because, admittedly, I'm not really much of a fan of this. They use these on a lot of the early figures, and I don't think it really works for everybody, but I think it works for him perfectly. But he really didn't need it. If you look at the figure without the vinyl vest, you could see that the robe was already sculpted on it. Here it is from the back, and you could clearly see a hood sculpted on there. So he really didn't need the vinyl robe, but I'm glad they included it because, as I said, I think it works perfect for him. And I say that because I think with the collar down, that's probably the closest you're going to get to a hood in that scale with that material as you're ever going to get. So for him, I think that looked perfect. I do think a better way to do this would have been to make the body in white or tan and paint the shirt and the belt and make the arms and the robe the same color, brown, or whatever color this is, as long as they matched. I think that would have been a better way to go. And that's the way I was actually going to do it, but I wanted to go a different way. So I picked up this Obi-Wan Kenobi figure, and the head was in really good shape, but the body wasn't, and that's partly the reason why I decided to go a different way. So for this reboot, I'm just going to use the head. As I said, the head was in really good shape, so I didn't really have to modify it or do anything to it. It's great just the way it is. For the body, I'm going to go with this. This is an Anakin Skywalker Force Ghost figure. I think this works for Obi-Wan Kenobi much better. Now, this isn't really an original idea. Customizers have been using this body for a while now. In fact, I think one company even makes a Force Ghost Obi-Wan with this body. The difference is, I'm not really a big fan of these arms. I mean, I guess they're alright for a Force Ghost, but in Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi is a living, breathing Jedi. So instead of these arms, I'm going to go with these. As you could see, this is a Luke Skywalker figure, and I think the arms will work much better on this figure for two reasons. One, the sleeves are already flared, and two, it has the built in lightsaber, just like the original had. Also, if you wanted to use this body as a Force Ghost, there's a 3D print model that has the option of having the lightsaber or having a separate lightsaber. That would be up to you. Because the version of Anakin Skywalker is a Force ghost, the robe is actually modeled in like kind of a gray instead of brown, along with the shirt and the belt. So since Luke's arms have to match them, I'm going to paint all those brown. I'm also going to be painting the lightsaber hilt silver. For the lightsaber itself, I'm going to be doing the same thing that I did with Luke. I'm going to use a 2 millimeter plexiglass rod, painted transparent blue. Okay, we got all the parts. Let's put it together and see what we got. All right, I like this. I like this very much. I think this is a big improvement. I still would have liked to have seen how the other way would have came out, but I don't really know if I'd want to do that now that I'm seeing this. I will say, regardless of what body I used, I would still go with the Luke Skywalker arms. Either way, they really work great on this body. And I think they'd work well in the original too. I think this one's a keeper. This is a nice addition to my Star Wars collection, and I'm happy to have it. Of course, like all Star Wars figures, there's not really much to them, so there's not a lot you can do. So I know this isn't much of a reboot. So in addition to this Obi-Wan Kenobi, I'm going to do another denizen of Tatooine, and that would be Greedo the Bounty Hunter. This figure was also released by Kenner in 1978 as part of their Alien Cantina series. They also made the cantina itself, two of them in fact. One was more or less just a cardboard cutout, but the other one was a lot more detailed. I actually prefer this one out of the two, and I'd like to do something with this, but that's for another episode. I guess I could say something about the whole who shot first controversy, but I already commented about that in a previous video, so there's no need to go over that again. So once again, with that being said, let's begin. When I first saw this figure, I thought it was pretty good. I didn't think anything of it as far as what he was wearing. I mean, the head looked good as far as I knew. But looking back on it years later, I could see that while the head was good, the suit was all wrong. But there was no way to know that back then. He wasn't in the movie very long, and he was only seen from the waist up. It wasn't until the late 90s that Kenner made an updated version and did pretty well by Greedo this time. If nothing else, it was more screen accurate, but not really a great design. The bodies on these late 90s figures were all kind of strange. They really didn't even fit into any of the vehicles. It's a shame because some of them are good, but they're really not usable. So for this reboot, I'm going to use the head and the arms. Now we need a body. Now, while I want this figure to look more screen accurate, it doesn't have to be totally accurate. I still want it to look a bit vintage. And with vintage, they didn't always get it 100% right. Sometimes close enough was fine. So we know Greedo wore some kind of a vest. So let's start with that. Now, the closest figure I could find with something like that from the vintage collection would be this. This is a Bespin Luke Skywalker from the Empire Strikes Back line. I think this will be perfect. The chest is a bit discolored, but I think that actually works. One thing that does need to be addressed is the lightsaber that he has hanging off his belt. That needs to be shaved down. Also, the pants and boots need to be repainted. I'm going to be doing the pants in blue and the boots in black. I'm also going to be including his blaster. This wasn't the one that he used in the movie, but this was the one that Kenner gave him, so it's fine. All right, once again, we have all the parts. Let's put it together and see what we got. All right, I like this. It's not 100% accurate, but it's close. I know the pants and the boots aren't the right color, but you only saw them from the waist up. Back in 1978, you really wouldn't know any better. Again, not 100% accurate, but closer than the original. And I'm fine with that. So now I have two more additions to my Star Wars collection. Again, I'm very happy with both of them. I like doing these figures, and I look forward to doing more. So I guess that about wraps it up for this episode. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, share, comment. I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, always remember and never forget, think outside the box.